take the sum of all the people he's debunked on veganism, that's him on Israel-Palestine.
Sent you an email asking for a debate. I think deep down, you know you would get bodied by Adar if you come at him with your Israeli genocide propaganda. You're a pussy. Go to 104 and 45 seconds.
Oh, damn, Ghidorah, was that you? That's fucking brutal. Okay, I appreciate the endorsement.
I never received an email from this guy.
Yeah, I definitely emailed him, but it's okay. It might have gone to spam or something.
Did I email him? I can't even remember.
No, he didn't email me.
Ratio is the best in modern warfare. It absolutely is not. This is just propaganda. It's the civilian.
So right now I'm reviewing him responding to me, responding to him, responding to me. That's some Inception level shit, and it's probably pretty annoying. Okay.
Combatant ratio, we can't know. We don't really have any way of knowing, but it's probably around somewhere 8-1, 9-1. You want to be charitable, you could say 7 or 6-1.
That would still be very good. Pretty sure that would still rank above average.
Okay, so I mean, look, let me start by saying this about vegan gains. I don't really watch any streamers, but I've been familiar with his content for years now. I really appreciated his debunkings on veganism, and what I think is troubling about this is he built a following by debunking people spreading misinformation, and he's always taken a very like analytical approach and data-centered approach to these debunkings, and he's very well read on veganism, but his level of knowledge on Israel-Palestine is similar to the same people he's debunking. This is not his area of expertise in any way, shape, or form, which is fine. You can't be an expert at everything, but at least acknowledge that you don't know what you're talking about. He's acting just like the same people that he built his name debunking. There's a misconception. I don't even want to say common misconception anymore because people have understood it's bullshit. John Spencer promoted this. It's based on a misinterpretation from a study from the 90s. People think that urban combat warfare is 9-1. There's no basis for this. In fact, I will challenge anybody to find me a conflict that had 9-1. And if the average is 9-1, that means some will be higher to 9-1. You're not going to find me any that are 9-1. You won't find me one that's 8-1, not even 7-1. So it's not true that 8-1, 9-1 would be good and below the average. The average is around 2-1. And this is based on a study that Michael Spagat put out from London University, where the data is available. You know, there's open source data anybody can review, where he took all the urban warfare from the past few decades, and it's around 2-1, 2 civilians for every combatant. And it might even be 1.5-1 because there's some amount of deaths that we don't know if they're combatants or civilians. So anywhere from 1.5-1 to 2-1, that's the average. Anybody claiming that it's something else, put out an analysis, show some proof, join me for a live stream, make the case. But there's no basis for that. And that's why people aren't saying 9-1 anymore. John Spencer's not saying 9-1 anymore. John Spencer never went on the record to correct his misinformation, but he stopped making this claim because he knows it's not true.
Proposing, that is still quite good. That's better than most other countries have done.
Yeah, he doesn't know what he's talking about. This is run-of-the-mill propaganda. 9-1 is a myth that's been debunked. It's around 1.5 to 2-1. So again, I guess I debunked this. I didn't even remember that I debunked this. So okay, we're doing like a double debunking.
One is urban warfare, the average of urban warfare, Gaza, and I think I
don't know if he's making a mistake with how it's calculated. If you have more civilians in an area, but you have very few militants, the chances of you killing a civilian goes up. If there's many, many militants, but very few civilians, your chances of killing a combatant goes up massively, and your chance of killing a civilian goes down. So it's calculated by considering the actual proportion of civilians and militants in a given area.
I mean, that's just complete bullshit. That's literally just a claim that has zero basis. That is not how civilian to combatant ratio is calculated. What is true is if you have a lot of civilians and not a lot of combatants in an area, then you're going to have a higher civilian to combatant ratio. So one can challenge the claim, right? Israel's operation in Gaza almost certainly is going to have the highest civilian to combatant ratio in the 21st century. And in fact, you're not even going to find something like this in the 20th century unless you look at actual genocides. So you could use that as a counter. You could say, okay, well, the reason why it's so high is because there's a lot of civilians and not many combatants. But that consideration, that's an argument to defend Israel against the high civilian to combatant ratio. It doesn't actually affect the calculation. And while I think it's important to talk about there being a lot of civilians and not many combatants, but this speaks to the brutality of Israel's operation. When Hamas is hiding comfortably under tunnels and you did not do proper evacuations out of Gaza, and you're using a record number of high-powered explosives per square kilometer on a densely populated city, that's indefensible, it's immoral, and accounts for a grave war crime. So yes, what you're saying is true. There's a lot of civilians in a densely populated area while Hamas is hiding in tunnels. That's why what Israel's doing is so fucking barbaric. So I do agree with you, but the moral implications of this, I just don't see how you could defend this. And somebody who is, I imagine, like, his veganism comes from an ethical standpoint. So how can you be so okay with the mass slaughter of civilians with very little to show in terms of military gain? How could you be okay with such a just careless mass slaughter of civilians? To me, it seems like an incoherent worldview. And I wonder where this bias of his comes from. Like, normally people are just this blindly supportive of Israel. It's either, you're Jewish or Israeli and you have that bias. That makes sense. Or you just really don't like Muslims. So you're just going to be more supportive. You don't care about the facts on the ground. You just want Israel to win no matter what. Or you're like some evangelical, right? But I don't know much about Vegan Gains. Like, which does he fall into any of these categories? And if not, maybe one of the viewers has some insight as to where this blind support to cringe levels comes from. Like, bro, you could make the case that Israel has a right to exist. You can make the case that Israel needs to defeat Hamas. Like, all this are defensible cases, but you don't need to just spread very blatant misinformation to support Israel.
So if you're just going to go by a raw figure of this many militants was killed, this many civilians was killed, then you could have like urban warfare where 99% of civilians were evacuated. And then you'll have like something ridiculous, like basically a perfect ratio of militants to civilians killed, which would be whatever to 0. And then if you compare that to Israel, where they're not able to evacuate civilians, and there's a very high proportion of civilians to militants, and you just look at the raw number, then it's going to be completely skewed. So I think he's making that mistake where he's not actually taking into consideration the proportion of militants to civilians in a given area.
Yeah, so again, I mean, that consideration does not affect how you calculate civilian to combatant ratio. It could affect the moral implications. But again, Israel has flattened Gaza with the civilian population stuck inside, while the combatants you're claiming that you're targeting have where to hide. That's not a defensible war strategy. It's just not.
How am I? I'm doing pretty good. The edibles are kicking in.
My range is
Okay, we'll give him an excuse if he's on edibles. I don't stream on edibles because it makes me much more slow,
a little different today. I'd say Gaza at the very minimum is 4-1, all the way up to 9-1. I think probably 7-8, 6-8 maybe is like a good.
So this stream was a long. No, this was
good guess, but I brought in the range because we really can't know.
So by the way, if we go by his figure, 6 to 1 or 8 to 1 militant to civilian casualty ratio, that is nowhere near approaching genocide. So he would not be able to use the genocide argument. You can't.
First of all, those who watch this know that I don't generally make the genocide argument. I care less for debates on terminology. And it's just not the best use of my time. So I'm not making the genocide argument. I'm making the argument that is morally indefensible and amounts to one of the greatest atrocities of the 21st century. But genocide is not dependent on ratio. Yeah, you could use it if it's a really low civilian to combatant ratio, then it's not, you could use that. But You can't say 6-1, 7-1 is proof that it's not genocide. That's not how genocide is determined. It's just an irrelevant argument in determining if it's genocide. You need to see if there's been an intent to destroy the population in whole or in part. I think there's a strong case to be made that Israel has had that intention to destroy the population in whole or in part. The systematic destruction of civilian infrastructure, levels of proportionality unlike which we've seen in the 21st century, massive swaths of Gaza being kill zones where they shoot anybody on sight. And when they publicly state that their goal is to ethnically cleanse Gaza, you can see a clear incentive to making Gaza unlivable and life for Gazans unbearable, so they voluntarily relocate. Some can say that this is too liberal an interpretation of genocide. That's fine. Again, I don't care for the terminology, but I think that there is still a strong case to be made that there is an intent to destroy the population in whole or in part.
And look at comparable genocides, nowhere fucking close, like orders of magnitude. So he can't claim Israel's committing a genocide. All he's left with is Israel could do a bit better with reducing civilian casualties.
No, I mean, that's not all I'm left with. I'm left with they could do a whole lot better. You want to use the word orders of magnitude, I think they could do orders of magnitude better. And they can engage in a way that doesn't amount to one of the single worst atrocities of the 21st century. Now, comparable genocides, there's very few things that have been determined genocide in the court of law because they have a narrow definition and it's hard to prove intent. But if we do look at examples of instances of group violences that academics have determined to be genocide in the 21st century, Gaza is actually worse than a lot of them. When we look at the rate in which women and children have been killed in Gaza, it's the highest rate out of any instance of violence since the Rwanda genocide. More than 1 in 50 children in Gaza have been killed so far. And again, Rwanda was much worse, but it's not like you have examples of other war that come close to what's happening in Gaza.
So that's all he's left with. If he literally admitted his position, the militant civilian casualty ratio is about 6 to 8 to 1.
Saying 9-1 is 8-1 is better than most. I challenge all of you to find me
Yeah, so it's funny to see that my repeat arguments now and in the last time I reviewed this.
single conflict that has an 8-1 civilian to combatant ratio. You could find genocides that have that. You're not finding it. You're not.
I don't think you can even find genocides that have it. Yeah, no, you wouldn't. I don't think he understands how it's calculated.
Finding conflict.
I definitely understand how it's calculated, my guy. You're not understanding how it's calculated, but provide a source, prove me wrong. I've been wrong before, and when I'm proven wrong, I'll acknowledge it. But there's a very clear way we determine civilian to combatant ratio, and it has nothing to do with what you're describing right now.
If you look at America and the Vietnam War,
it's not better than Vietnam.
That's better than the Iraq War.
It's not better than the Iraq War. Vietnam is like 3-1 or something. It's just not worlds apart. And maybe I'm even exaggerating it. Vietnam might even be less. We'll do a quick LLM search, which doesn't have 100% accuracy, but hard to pin down precisely because of the nature of the conflict. Total death 2.4 to 4 million. Civilian death, If we take 2 million civilian deaths and 1.4 million combatant death, yeah, so 1.4 to 1. So I even over exaggerated it. For every combatant killed, about 1.4 civilians killed. It's just he just doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm sorry. And to be so confident with such false claims and false claims about like actual people dying, this is not something to take lightly and to just, be wrong about.
In the Iraq War. Iraq War is probably around 5-1. That's 5-1, but that's if you include.
I can't remember if that was 5-1.
Can't remember. I don't know if he ever looked into this. I remember what I said here. I mean, I obviously know my arguments. It's 5-1 if you include indirect deaths. Normally, they don't include indirect deaths in civilian to combatant ratio, but something like, we don't know for sure, but something like half the deaths are from the collapse of the healthcare system. So it's closer to like Iraq's like 2-1, 3-1.
Not finding an exact number.
That's convenient. Okay, give us an estimate.
PLS challenge him to a debate. He's such a smug, arrogant prick and needs to get knocked down a peg on this Israel-Palestine stuff.
Okay, somebody's telling him to knock me down a
I'd have to
peg.
look at that.
He has to look at that. Okay, why? You can't come up with a number? It's he looked at a number and it just doesn't fit what he wants it to be. So now he needs to look at it. Okay.
I'm pretty goddamn sure the Iraq War wasn't 5-1.
It was less.
I think
it was less.
I think he's. Give me a second. Yeah, I think what this guy is doing is he's looking at the total militant deaths and the total civilian deaths, and just coming up with the ratio that way.
That's literally how you come up with the ratio. There's no other way to come up with it. This is just completely made up.
I don't think he's doing the proper calculation where you also factor in the proportion of civilians to militants.
You don't. That literally has nothing to do with the calculation. Nothing. Again, that has something to do with maybe the moral calculation, but not the actual raw numbers calculation.
Deaths. Most civilian combatant ratios do not include indirect deaths. They include
You would have to.
deaths. In Iraq, 100.
You would have to. Like, what the fuck does he mean by that? Like, so in his hypothetical, if I don't know, example would be United States goes to war with X country, or Israel goes to war with X country. Let's say the war is justified. Israel or the United States, whatever example, doesn't matter. You want to use the war is justified, so you should attack the other side. And then let's say you bomb a military base, and that's all you bomb. You just bomb the military base. So let's say members of that military base were doing some sort of humanitarian charity work, when they weren't at the base. And that results in certain people not getting enough food to eat or clothing when it gets cold or something like that. He would consider those deaths in the fucking casualty figures because they're indirect, like something stupid like that.
Okay, he misunderstood my position. You definitely need to include indirect deaths to do casualty figures. You generally, if you look at how civilian to combatant ratio is generally calculated, indirect deaths are often excluded. So my analysis, which is based on verifiable data, anywhere between 4-1 to 9-1, is not including indirect deaths, nor is most of the civilian to combatant ratios. But in Iraq, the way we get to 5-1 is by including indirect deaths, right? That's how people calculated that one. So it's true that you do calculate indirect deaths for total fatalities. It's very relevant. That's currently not being counted in Gaza. So right now we have 59,000 confirmed deaths. This is not including indirect deaths. We don't have any data on that yet. There's been one analysis that put it at around 8,000, which seems like a pretty good methodology. I won't get into that now, but you could see I interviewed Mike Spagat, who put that out, and how he reached a conclusion of 8,000 indirect deaths. But again, it's generally not used for civilian to combatant ratio, so that's why I'm putting that as a caveat when mentioning Iraq. If you remove indirect deaths, Iraq is like something like 3-1 or 2-1.
Like, this is absolutely ridiculous then.
Thousands died from collapse of the healthcare system. If you include them, you're at around 5-1, not 8-1. And 5-1 is unprecedented. That doesn't include indirect deaths. I mean, this is just complete.
So, by the way, in Iraq, I actually was friends with some people who served in fucking Iraq. They were able to mass evacuate civilians. So why in the fuck would he, like again, this is the only way any of this makes any fucking sense if he's not factoring in the actual proportion of civilians to militants in a given area. Because again, in Iraq, they were able to evacuate civilians. Gaza, they're able to evacuate people within Gaza, but they're not able to actually leave Gaza. So again, if he's just looking at total, like just the raw civilian to militant deaths, he's going to come up with just wacky calculations.
So I'm not going to repeat my argument. I've addressed this.
Bullshit.
That may even be better than Afghanistan. So,
Oh, it's not.
Okay.
Oh my God, he has no idea what he's talking about. I can understand why he wouldn't debate me.
what they did for October 7th. What do you mean wouldn't debate him?
But when you look at
I've never received an email from this guy, or saw it anyway. Does he have an email?
My email's there. Okay, let's see. He's looking
Let
it
me
up.
check. Oh, Adar Weinreb. Friday, May 23rd. Oh, okay, so he did. Wait.
I sent him, I think I titled it, I saw you called me a cuck on stream, something like that.
I don't think I ever refused to debate the guy. This is what he's saying in my email. I think I said I'm not really interested because his takes are fucking stupid.
How's that not a refusal? First of all, he didn't reply to my email, but He said, I didn't refuse. I just said, I'm not interested because his takes are stupid. I don't know. Sounds like a refusal, right?
Manipulating MOH is complete bullshit. And so is the idea that it was Hamas who broke the ceasefire. Realize, oh, geez, okay, yeah, I'm not debating. I'm not wasting my time with that horse shit, bro. Okay, this guy is like fully drunk in the Kool-Aid.
Literally every claim I make on Gaza, I've investigated everything on my own. What Kool-Aid have I drunk? That I'm saying that we have verifiable data from the MOH. I've put out many analyses of this. And Israel did break the ceasefire. He claimed when we had a ceasefire a few months ago that it was Hamas that broke it. That's just institutionalized pro-war propaganda that has zero basis. What happened there was 3 phases that were signed on. During the first phase, both sides were violating it a little bit, Israel much more. Israel was still carrying out airstrikes, killing children during the ceasefire. Hamas violated it in a very minor way by releasing the names of hostages that will be released a little bit late. So Israel was violating phase 1 to a much greater extent than Hamas. And then at the end of phase 1, Israel said, we're not going to go into phase 2, but we're willing to extend phase 1, which would essentially allow them to just continue their operation in Gaza. They'd get more hostages for more prisoners, but they don't need to commit to ending their operation and then could just continue. Hamas said, no, we're not interested in this extension. We're interested in the 3 phases we both signed on. And then Israel said, nope, we're going to continue our operation. The media framed that as, the media and the Hezbollah community framed that as, Hamas rejected the continuation of phase 1. Think about how dishonest that is. I don't think Vegan Gains is being dishonest here. I just think he really has no idea what he's talking about. Like none.
Like, wow, that guy is on Kool-Aid. I was willing to, but after reading that, yeah, I had better things to do.
Okay, I mean, he could come up with any excuse he wants why he's going to refuse to debate me. Drinking the Kool-Aid, it's very obvious. There's a knowledge gap here that is just, we're worlds apart. To use an analogy, let's say you have a high schooler who saw one video by some carnivore diet dude, and that high schooler comes and makes all these super confident claims about why carnivore diet is the healthiest and the only way. And then Vegan Gains wants to debate him, and he's like, no, that guy drank the Kool-Aid, I'm not going to debate him. I mean, that's the difference in knowledge, is just take the sum of all the people he's debunked on veganism. That's him on Israel-Palestine. It's sad. And I actually lost a lot of respect for the guy. To build a name for yourself on debunking misinformation only to be such an obvious propagator of misinformation on a different topic, it's hypocritical, it's dishonest, and it lacks integrity. And you know, Vegan Gains, if you're watching this, I hope you do. I'll even change my offer. Let's not debate, okay? I don't even think it would be fair. I'm not rhetorically stronger than you. I'm not smarter than you. It's just purely a knowledge gap. I have researched this extensively. The fact that I served in the IDF and live in Israel, none of that is even relevant. It's just the fact that I've done such a deep dive on this, researched it extensively. We're just worlds apart in what we know about Israel-Palestine. I'm going to change my offer. I don't want to debate you. Let's just have a good faith conversation. Let's really try to establish a baseline agreement of the facts on the ground. I'm not going to come in swinging. I'm not going to try to destroy you or debunk you. If you genuinely care about truth, let's talk about it.